All right. Hey, good morning, YouTube. Looks like we're live. Let's get some things rolling around here, see what's going on. How's everybody doing? I'm behind the power curve and need more coffee. How's it going, everybody? Hope everybody had a good weekend. We survived unscathed for the most part. Nice weather around here. Was able to get some stuff done around the domicile. See, get this thing warmed up, see if anybody checks in. Browse the interwebs a little bit here. How's the weather out there for you folks? Lots of snow going on around. Or was it? So you had that record snow in Arizona Friday. I guess I haven't seen anything since then. I've been slacking. So we'll see how this pans out. Get some stuff up. Hey, Chipper66, good morning. How are things your way? Looks like a lot of mixed results out there. We got some snow all along the top half. We got a good break this weekend. Looks like we're going to have more coming in tomorrow. And then into Thursday, just to have some good snow, winter weather. You know, alive and kicking, right? That's all that counts. Good enough, I guess you'd say. But the only thing I've been noticing is they're pushing hard to get this war started in Venezuela. Several incidents along the border of Venezuela and Brazil and Colombia. It's been about it that struck me as important. They announced that I guess it was early Sunday. They tweeted out that they were delaying the economic sanctions against China, and everybody got all excited in the economic world. But really, China and Venezuela, I think, are linked now to a certain extent. I'm not sure how they're going to use them against each other, but it would seem that some of what goes on with China is leverage to either exacerbate or minimize what goes on in Venezuela. It's pretty hot. So that's what seems to be going down there in my evaluation. If I can get anything pulled up here. Taking my time. Hey, Tyler checks in. What's going on? Let's talk about prepping. This top thing on Drudge is about the Oscars, like anybody cares. Didn't see any movies anyway. So there's not. Yeah, none of those border clashes are on the top of the links there on the Drudge. That was about the only thing I saw going on. Let me see if I can pull up some other stories. Video about the Venezuela border incidents if you didn't see. Let's see if I can pull those up. But the trade negotiations were publicized as going off without a hit, or going well, I guess you'd say. Had a big move in the Shanghai index and everything yesterday after that announcement. For the stock side, at least, Yeah, they're really, the stuff on Venezuela is almost like they're wanting to forget about it after getting it all stoked up, and now they're ignoring it. Some people got shot and killed at one of the locations. They were setting food, humanitarian support trucks on fire in another location. So pretty much they were committed to blocking the humanitarian aid. I wonder how many truckloads of weapons they were trying to get into the country as well. Depends on how they were getting shipped in. Let's see. Not a lot of stories on it. That's interesting. It's almost like they're trying to cover it up now. It's not nearly what you figured it would be. Where is? Hey, Ann, good morning. You wonder if Maduro left? Yeah, I don't think that's happening. It does not appear so. My clicker is working slow today. And the Yahoo and the Google search results are decidedly different. The Washington Post is going to tell us what's going on. I wonder if we can decipher any of that. Let's check that out. So let's move on over here. Oh. They gave him 8 days. Is that right? I did not hear the ultimatum. Was they the different countries, or was they the his neighbors? Was it Bolsonaro and everybody? Or who was it? He's giving the ultimatum. I hadn't heard that. Oh, weather snapshot real quick. Snowing upper half. Venezuela crisis. What's going on in Venezuela according to the Washington Post? So what do you have to decipher for the average American who buys into the propaganda papers? Let's see. Obviously there's some rioting, I guess you would say. So this says Venezuelans remove a roadblock created by the Venezuelan National Guard. This is on the Bolivar International Bridge in Cúcuta, Colombia. So this is on the Colombian border, supposedly. Said over the weekend, members of the opposition clashed with soldiers, police, and government loyalists at the country's borders with Colombia and Brazil as the nation's humanitarian aid, economic, and political crises worsen. Okay, they're rehashing some old stuff here with the obviously the propped up, was it Guaido is the other dude's name that's everybody's calling president? Guaido. I haven't even watched any TV to hear how they pronounce that. I probably should listen to something, or I guess I could get it off the interwebs here. Guaido has called for free and fair elections, even though he doesn't believe in them. Once he gets power, he'll just shut them down. So that's the guy most of the countries are backing on the western side of the world, I guess you'd say, or I guess you'd say the NATO alliance type countries, including Colombia, Brazil, and some other South American countries, but there's still some Central American countries supporting Maduro, including Bolivia, I think is. Trump has been saying yada yada. What's Trump actually doing? So this story by the Washington Post is really just to get everybody up to speed because they ignored it for so long. They figured their readers don't know what's going on. Trump is hit with sanctions, including targeting oil exports, which we've done for years. Called on members of the military to defect. Trump is also won't rule out military option. Looks like we're pushing for the military option. What are other countries doing? 60 countries have recognized Guaido. There's a small sample, mostly, again, the NATO alliance. A few dozen still support Maduro. My goodness, can you give me something new there, Washington Post? Inflation, the economic crisis. What happened this weekend? Thank you. That's what I really wanted to know. Maduro has been blocking most aid. Nevertheless, the opposition sent thousands of volunteers, quote, end quote. Nobody got paid, according to them, I guess. The opposition sent thousands of volunteers to the Colombian and Brazilian borders to defy Maduro's orders to bring in aid supplies. They hoped that the military wouldn't be used force against unarmed civilians, and they were wrong, apparently. And that soldiers might defect, which some did, apparently. They were wrong. Anti-Maduro crowds faced tear gas fired by Venezuelans at the Colombian border. 285 people were injured, 37 hospitalized on the Colombian side of the border, and there were reports of a Colombian being shot, but it may have been just somebody on the Colombian side of the border. I think they're trying to hash that out still. At least 4 were killed on the Venezuelan-Brazil border after clashing with pro-government militias. So now the militias are pro-government. It's not just the National Guard. It's the first time I've seen that term, pro-government militias. And although dozens of members of the Venezuelan military switched sides, events showed that Maduro is maintaining the support and strength of his security forces. If his security forces are working so well, I think they would have snatched up Guaido by now. But they couldn't because this weekend he secretly crossed the border into Colombia despite having been banned from leaving Venezuela by the country's Supreme Court. Guaido will meet with Pence as well as other Latin American leaders in Bogota on Monday. Yep, that's not a good way to claim your throne there, leaving the country. He seemed to hint that he is open to a military intervention after Saturday's chaos. This is a quote. Today's events forced me to make a decision to propose to the international community in a formal way that we must have all options open to achieve the liberation of this country that is fighting, and we will continue to fight. Oh, he's going to be a good little puppet. Bring everybody in. Bring in all the tools of war. Let's fight over all this. So he's obviously has not enough support to fight the government forces, it wouldn't look like. Or else he wouldn't be doing that. So his support is pretty minimal, probably. But even in the United States, which is taking a strong stance against Maduro, a military intervention has little support. Unfortunately, those that make war are the ones making the decisions. So we'll see how long that gets stopped. Invading Venezuela could help Maduro portray himself globally as a leftist martyr persecuted by the Trump administration. Okay, I guess that's one way to look at it. But you wouldn't last very long because there's not much of a roadblock down there if we went in. Now, if the Colombians and the Brazilians do most of the dirty work, is a different case. You could definitely make a case for. I can see him making the case for Brazil and Colombia moving across, controlling the border checkpoints and increasing aid and justifying stuff on humanitarian grounds. But we'll see how that goes. But that's out of the Washington Post, which kind of seems like they don't know what's going on. They're just catching up. Another Venezuela's tense showdown ends in chaos and death. Some of the pictures from the weekend, it looks like. Showdown in Venezuela Saturday over humanitarian aid resulted in at least 4 deaths and 285 injuries. It's almost like some of the images that you see out of Somalia back in the early 90s. Remember those? Interesting. Let's see, where can I find some video on this? That's a short story. I wouldn't even call that really a story. They're really pushing the Yankee Go Home theme, reviving some of the Banana Wars rhetoric, tear gas by the National Guard on the border with Venezuela. Colombian police escort a Venezuelan soldier who surrendered at the border. But there was that video of them with the vehicles on fire that hasn't popped up here. Let's go to the side chat. Try to track some of this stuff down. Third Options joined us. This video may be required for quality control purposes. Okay, that's good. It's probably not the greatest quality, so it'll save you some megabyte space if you just keep it low quality. 1080p is not going to exactly help your cause at all. Let's see what else we can pull up here. And save and links and all that good stuff. Never trust the Washington Post or the Times, right? Well, it was the way they wrote that article. It's like they just figured nobody knew what was going on. They wrote it in a manner. It's like, have you guys been this out of touch? You're trying to give everybody the rundown when we're like in the 6th inning, and they're reviving everybody, rewalking everybody through the 1st through the 5th innings. It's like, yeah. Let's see. How do I get video? Video of the crisis. The Australian news is calling it shocking protest. Really? Nobody saw this coming? Usually they're shocked by something when you didn't expect it, right? Aid truck goes up in flames, Al Jazeera. Go figure. We got to rely on Al Jazeera for the good stuff. Check. We've made the list. All right. Oh, Ann made the list. She was probably on the list before us, third. Midwest Prepper, never trust. Yeah, okay. Good morning, Midwest. How's it going? It's amazing people have the strength to riot and they don't have enough food, right? Hey, good morning, Iron Witch. How are you? And Barry Woods joined us and Comrade Wes. Good morning, Comrade. Let's see if this came up here.
The 4 trucks carrying U.S.
Oh, let me pause that. Ann says she's not on nobody's list. That's what you think. Third is pretty good at what he does, from what I hear. He's not a slacker. Like the rest of us, at least. He's much more proficient at what he does. Whoa. All right, check this out. See what they got to say.
aid were trying to cross the bridge separating Venezuela and Colombia. Then one was set on fire. The opposition said it was set ablaze by the Venezuelan soldiers, but the government says the opposition did it to pin the blame on President Nicolas Maduro. One incident in a day of confusion and violence. In Venezuela, there were clashes between supporters of opposition leader Juan Guaido and security forces. Several people were injured. Earlier, Venezuelan soldiers commandeered armored personnel carriers and ran them through their own barricades, which had been set up to prevent the U.S. aid from coming in. 4 soldiers then ran across the border and defected. Guaido watched events from the Colombian side of the border. He urged soldiers to defect in mass.
The call on the armed forces is very clear. Welcome to the right side of history. Welcome to those soldiers who today sided with the Constitution.
But it didn't happen. In the capital, Caracas, Maduro seemed emboldened.
I can't continue putting up with this. We can't continue putting up with Colombia lending itself to an aggression against Venezuela. That is why I've decided to break all political and diplomatic relations with the fascist government of Colombia, and all its ambassadors and general consuls have to leave Venezuela within 24 hours. Get out of here, oligarchy.
On the border with Brazil, the violence turned deadly as campaigners tried to get aid in. There's fear and anger on both sides, and no clear path to peace. Gabriel Ozondo, Al Jazeera.
All right, there's the Al Jazeera rundown. That was fairly good. It's funny to hear Maduro trying to talk down on Colombia. So big mess continues. We'll see if we have the good sense to stay out of it or if everybody's going to get their way that's trying to push the intervention. But definitely a lot of people starving and suffering in the meantime. No, I don't think that was Al-Qaeda there in that photo. Maybe a paid guy, not an actual agent. So many cameras, and nobody catches the one that sets the truck on fire, right? Well, they didn't pull the camera out till the truck was on fire, I guess. Even though they're supposed to be covering the event. That was it's funny when the first video came of that. When those, I guess you can call it an armored personnel car. Those armored cars came charging to the border. One of the headlines of the other ones was Jeep runs through border checkpoint as troops defect or something like that this weekend. And I was like, looking at it, I'm like, that's no Jeep. I wish my Jeep had that kind of armor. That was pretty funny. I was like, whoever called that a Jeep might have been slightly off. How's Tommy Boy's markets going? Flat? Midland? Fair to Midland is today? So that's kind of a catch up on the Venezuelan thing. So they got the propped up president who looks like a Venezuelan version of Obama out there leaving the country to go speak with Pence. So then Maduro chastises Colombia and breaks off relations with Colombia. He's already broken relations with Brazil, correct? So we'll see how that goes. Mr. Miyagi says, best way to avoid a fight is to not be there. These people need to get out of that crowd. Talking about people in general, those rallying at the border checkpoints. I guess some of them are protesters, some of them are the aid workers, and some of them are the border people. But you figure there's people that go back and forth, just like if it happened on the Mexican border here. People that just go back and forth for work and different trade and stuff get caught in the middle of it, trying to get this business done. I would imagine this is all hindering regular commerce, without a doubt. Wes says it could have been a OICU if I knew what that was. Only incite civil unrest. That's an interesting new acronym you have there, Wes. The instigators, huh? Is that going to be a new acronym for the instigators? Hey, Irish USMC vet, what's going on? What's going on out your way? Common man, good morning. How are you? Right, and they're dangling this 8 out there trying to get people to support them. And still, it sounds like this Gato character doesn't have enough support from anybody to make a difference when he has to sneak out of the country and is not getting really any headway, it doesn't sound like. So it sounds like the Venezuelans, for the most part, don't want any foreign intervention for sure. They may not like Maduro, but they don't want to deal with all the incursions of their neighbors or anybody else to help them deal with their problems. But now it's escalated to the point where they're going to be fighting over food. That might change a little bit. So let's move on. What else is going on out there in the world? We don't have to focus on Venezuela. The first half is enough for that. But Brexit is getting closer and closer. And no deal is still on the table. If they allow it to go through without totally calling martial law and shutting everything down and saying you can't do a no-deal Brexit. Trying to get a new deal, still pushing for a deal. "22 degrees where you are, Irish. You're getting our weather from last week." Less chance of setting off the AI if you make up your own ABCs. Is that right? Make up your own acronyms. Is that like your drum network? Same principle, Wes? Makes sense. I like it. I'd never thought of it that way. Until they add it to their algorithm, they can't weed it out, right? Yeah, not too much going on around this front for the weekend. Around here, coming out of Friday, what's on the zero hedge? Oh, about that. See, that's funny. We got the crisis in Venezuela heating up just as we're supposedly going to have this trade deal with China, which is kind of just an extension of the Venezuelan front down there at this point. So you got to figure, are both of us getting paid to keep our fingers out of Venezuela with that deal, or are we paying one side or the other off to stay out of Venezuela? Depends on who wins that, right? So the tariffs are being delayed, and again, the question is anybody in Russia or China willing to go to war over Venezuela? Third says the EU is arguing that Parliament doesn't have to honor the Brexit vote. Right? Oh, of course they don't. I mean, yeah, it's just a suggestion, just a recommendation, just a thought. Why would they ever respect the people that put them there? They never have, so it's kind of not surprising. But there's been a lot of that floated, that Parliament can do their own thing, especially now that it's a no-deal Brexit. It's like the panic mode is like getting pushed, like it's the end of the world. So they're approaching it with that. Yada yada. We were talking about the around here big news. So there's a gold mining mergers going on, and I think Christine had brought it up. Who brought it up in the last chat the other day? And I'd gotten confused because there's two different mergers going on, but they were talking about Barrick and Newmont merging while there's already a merger planned for Newmont and another company. So I had gotten confused by that. So they're like multiple of multiples going to make just a huge conglomerate that I don't know what that would mean in the bigger picture other than possibly more mining. Do they really have more leverage with the federal government to mine more? I don't know. But hold on. Pause this. Slacking off. So this is Sunday night. Newmont revealed that Barrick had purchased a small stake in Newmont, and that following the purchase, petitioned to lower the threshold to call for a shareholders meeting. So the buyout is ensuing. Shares of Newmont have been climbing. Barrick first revealed it was considering making an offer. Yeah, so Newmont is trying to make a deal with Goldcorp. That's what it was. This is what I had heard about before that was in the works. But this threatens to scuttle Newmont's deal with Goldcorp, which was set to close during Q2. This would be the second attempt at a tie-up between the two companies, which didn't work out back in 2014. From the Wall Street Journal quotes, this offer sets up a showdown between management teams. Barrick has long considered merging with Newmont, America's largest listed miner. So this would pair up their large gold mining operations in Nevada and create an industry giant that would dwarf the nearest competitor, right? A combination would create a behemoth worth about $42 billion, which is in today's corporate world is like nothing. It's like if you're not worth $100 billion, you're not really a corporation around, it seems like anymore. Barrick said Monday it would create opportunities to squeeze out over $7 billion in cost savings. So that's out of the Wall Street Journal quotes. The impetus for this rash deal making is clear. After years of underinvestment, as the price of gold languished, miners have been emboldened by the recent uptick in gold prices and the possibility that the business cycle might be nearing its end, since it would take years to ramp up. Mining operations, acquisitions, and mergers are the best option to expand production ahead of a possible boom. So, saying they're trying to get ahead of the increasing gold prices, that would make sense. So now that's going to be big news around, big impacts around here if that goes through and all that stuff comes to pass. Why doesn't anybody hit the like bucket button, Wes? Everybody can't get to their coffee fast enough. It takes time. It takes time this time of morning. The like button's hard to reach. So the markets are up off the trade deal supposedly today, but they're still not significantly above 26,000, which is still my baseline for trying to figure out what's going to go on with the whole economy thing. if the Fed's going to be able to drive everything higher just off of inflation or not. Brigadier Manarino sending out some tweets about the trade negotiations. Check the Twitter world for anything in particular breaking. We haven't had an earthquake or anything in quite some time of significant size. I mean, there's small ones daily, obviously, but nothing that's really got everybody concerned. What else is going on out there? Everybody else's part of the world. I am not finding anything on this slow Monday morning, I guess you'd say. Here was an interesting article that I found over the weekend that popped up, which is out of the BBC. So we can wrap it up with this, unless somebody else throws something out there. It's right on topic of everything we talk about, so I thought it was appropriate. Are we on the road to civilization collapse? Indeed. Are we not? How could we not be, right? Would be most of our assumptions. So what does the BBC say is the road to collapse? And again, these putting some links in the description box. If you refresh or check back later, when you close out the window, they should be there. Once we get this going. My goodness. So RB wrote on the civilization collapse. Studying the demise of historic civilizations can tell us how much risk we face today, such as the Roman example. Like we're copying verbatim the Roman example. So they're going to use the historical take. It's like they've been watching YouTube or something. It says, worryingly, the signs are worsening. Indeed. Great civilizations are not murdered. Instead, they take their own lives. Man. I guess they say it better than we do, but essentially we've said the same thing. The Roman Empire, for example, was the victim of many ills, including overexpansion, climatic change, environmental degradation, and poor leadership. They don't mention financial recklessness and, with that overexpansion, endless wars. But it was also brought to its knees when Rome was sacked by the Visigoths because of poor border policies, in 410, and the Vandals in 455. Collapse is often quick, and greatness provides no immunity. The Roman Empire covered 4.4 million square miles in 390. 5 years later, it plummeted to 2 million square miles. By 476, the empire's reach was 0. That's a pretty quick decline. And the thing they often refer to, though, is people outside the empire still didn't realize that they still considered themselves Romans, which I think is going to be one of our America's problems. People are going to still thinking of American terms. The cognitive dissonance doesn't allow them to think forward into the current realities when they broke down into the different countries of Europe and everything. Took a while. So it says this guy's study, his research is at the Center for the Study of Existential Risk at the University of Cambridge. This is his talking about himself in the third person or first person. I am attempting to find out why collapse occurs through a historical autopsy. What can the rise and fall of historic civilizations tell us about our own? What are the forces that precipitate or delay a collapse, and what do we see similar patterns? And do we see similar patterns today? So basically, this guy was going to watch YouTube and catch up to where we've been for the last 10 years or so, depending on who you are. Good job. And this guy's getting paid how much at this Center for the Study of Existential Risk? So this guy goes to Cambridge and studies things, and is going to get paid to do what we do on YouTube every day. The first way to look at past civilizations is to compare their longevity. This can be difficult because there is no strict definition of civilization, nor an overarching database of their births and deaths. There's a graph of the average lifespan of a civilization in years. Going back to, I guess, the Middle Ages, to the end of the Roman Empire here. So here is a collapse can be defined as a rapid and enduring loss of population, identity, and socio-economic complexity. Public services crumble and disorder ensues as government loses control of its monopoly on violence. Interesting terms there. So as the government loses control of its monopoly on violence is part of a collapse. Interesting terms. I've never heard somebody say it that way. Interestingly, the U.S. government's increasing monopoly on violence is causing the collapse to increase faster. I would note that. Virtually all past civilizations have faced this fate. Some recovered or transformed, such as the Chinese and Egyptian. Other collapses were permanent, as was the case of Easter Island, right? Sometimes the cities are the epicenter of collapses, as is the case with Rome. In other cases, such as the Mayan ruins, they are left abandoned as a mausoleum for future tourists. What can all this tell us about a future of global modern civilization? Are the lessons of agrarian empires applicable to our post-18th century period of industrial capitalism? He says, I would argue that they are. Societies of the past and present are just complex systems composed of people and technology. The theory of a normal accident suggests that complex technological systems regularly give way to failure. So collapse may be a normal phenomenon for civilizations, regardless of their size and stage. So I think we've all come to the same conclusion at this point. And this guy's getting paid. This is a pretty lengthy article, it looks like. I'm not going to go down the whole thing, but it looks like it's a pretty good breakdown of the collapse and what to prepare for. It's in the links below if you want to check that out. Bring some different terminology to your collapsitarian mindset. But got some good different perspective from the academic sense, I guess, but also reinforcing the idea that the collapse is inevitable. It's just a matter of how it happens. Again, his key things, climatic change, environmental degradation, inequality and oligarchy, complexity, external shocks, randomness, and bad luck. I guess that has a hand in it sometimes, or at least the final date and everything. He's tying it into common modern times. And I guess we'll see what happens. So he closes this out. Just to wrap it up from the bottom. What is conclusion statement is the collapse of our civilization is not inevitable, though, apparently. After all that writing, he says this. History suggests it is likely, but we have the unique advantage of being able to learn from the wreckages of societies past. Now, as writing at the BBC here, and he studies at Cambridge, is he so I wonder if is he like tying Britain to the whole Western world, or is his perspective Britain, or what? Because you got to figure Great Britain's already in its decline for the last 100 years of that transition. Like, what's his perspective here? Is he tying the greater Western world together? Which I hate as a comparison, but people do it all too often. But here is, of course, it says, we know what needs to be done. Emissions can be reduced. Inequalities level. This guy's a full-out socialist. He's just going to push for his agenda to prevent the collapse. So all that fear-mongering on collapse is just to push his socialist agenda. So emissions can be reduced, inequalities leveled, environmental degradation reversed, innovation unleashed, and economies diversified. The policy proposals are there. So that's his solution to end the collapse. So we will not collapse, the West, Britain, if we do these things. That's on, took him studying at Cambridge to figure out what Karl Marx said. Interesting. Only the political will is lacking. We can also invest in recovery. There are already well-developed ideas for improving the ability of food and knowledge systems to be recuperated after catastrophe. Avoiding the creation of dangerous and widely accessible technologies is also critical. Such steps will lessen the chance of a future collapse becoming irreversible. We will only march into collapse if we advance blindly. We're only doomed if we are unwilling to listen to the past. I guess that depends on how you say we. So that'd definitely be an article worth reading more details into it. The historical examples seem to be pretty good. And the references. But his conclusion might be a little bit off to what we suppose. I would definitely go check that out. Hey, good morning, Alicia. Toxic Threads is with us. All right, Wes is out of here. The day is calling. And had a good day. All right, have a good day. What are we betting about? Third option, random. Trump is the current favorite for 2020 with Harris nipping at his heels. Kamala Harris being, can you imagine Kamala Harris as president? Talk about a sideshow. Dad on YouTube has joined us. Good morning, Dad. Just dropping in to say hello and then head out. All right, thanks for checking in. Wes may try quartz crystal mining. Well, what do quartz crystals go for nowadays? All right. So really, you can't beat that. Talking about the collapse to get your morning day started. Pretty interesting article. We'll have to maybe chew on that one a little bit longer. Really see what they're talking about. Midwest, and here I thought we were going to cover the Oscars this morning. Yeah, who won the Oscars? What happened? Netflix was denied an Oscar according to Drudge. That's about the only thing I know about the Oscars. Oh my goodness. Talk about a joke. Another article out of the UK. It's interesting, the timing. They back him up in two of the biggest, because that last article on the BBC was from last week, the 19th, and there's another one on the 23rd. Scientists fear end to mankind, not decades away, but much sooner. Maybe this ties into the Brexit fear mongering. that they're pushing. Well, if I can get this to clear out. Tyler says all my work here on YouTube and I wasn't even nominated. Right? Yeah, that's a serious concern, Tyler. A lot of good work gets done on YouTube. Nobody gets rewarded for it, right? Talking about plagues possibly hitting the Middle East again. Toxic, Alicia says the end of the world, so old, so overused, right? It's not the end of the world, it's just a changing, right? So in this other article, about the fear the end of mankind. Let me get this link in the description box for later reference. Let me pull it up. I don't have it on the radar. So this is we'll close it out with this, definitely. This is from over the weekend. Again, the BBC, or in Britain. So you figure they're really pushing the agenda from the British point of view. The study noted the fall of the Roman Empire and the equally, if not more, advanced Han, Mayan, and Gupta empires, as well as many advanced Mesopotamian empires, are all testimony to the fact that advanced, sophisticated, complex, and creative civilizations can be both fragile and impermanent. And here they're putting the fear-mongering into climate change when they say they're being dual-tongued with their climate change comments. Here it says, when coupled with an unsustainable population or unfavorable climate change, it can spell disaster. So was it man-made climate change back then, or is it only now? Like that statement's always confused me now. Yes, the climate changes, indeed. The mini ice age of the 1800s is a note of that. So this is UK focused. UK government Office of Science warned that a combination of flood, water, and energy crises might be the catalyst for a perfect storm in the next decade. Well, they're ready to write off the UK already. We don't have enough anthracite to reinvent electricity or launch the Industrial Revolution again. That's an interesting comment. So saying we'll be basically back to the 1700s and any type of big collapse where everything's just wiped out. So we don't have to reinvent it. We just have to restart it. So it will be agriculture, simple tools, and dark nights. Potentially. But what would be so bad about that, right? Maybe that's what it needs to be. Do we really need to have all the electricity and computers and everything else? Is that really... Couldn't human life go on better with just the knowledge and not necessarily the stuff? Here it says, for instance, with many of its citizens living off grid, tech startups in Africa have built everything from solar-powered phone chargers to flat-screen TVs. Renewable power might fare better in the future, right? Japan has the oldest population. That's kind of a bad conclusion here. If this isn't dismal enough, there is evidence the world is entering a new arms race. That's one way to close it. One explanation is the Fermi paradox. Why we haven't encountered aliens is that intelligent species tear themselves to pieces before they master interstellar travel. I see. So there's a theory, a paradox theory on why aliens haven't visited. So that's another article that's much shorter and less in detail than the last, but scientists fearing dead to mankind is decades away, but much sooner. As we all suppose. That's why we're here, right? All right, folks. You all have a good week. Enjoy your Monday. Don't let it beat you down. Thanks for checking in. Midwest Prepper says it's interesting they left out the British Empire. I think they still consider the British Empire to be in a transitional phase, it sounds like, from the way those articles are written. They're still considering themselves the center of the universe, that Australia, Canada, the United States are all extensions of themselves and just a transition phase, not the end of the empire. Hey, Whisper, good morning. What's the discussion? Whatever we come up with. Earlier it was Venezuela, and now we're talking about the collapse of the West, for lack of a better word. Alicia, are they calling us stupid? Yes, without anthracite, we couldn't do anything in the future, apparently. Tyler says maybe aliens don't let new species join the community until after they eradicate communism. Right? Or maybe you have to go full anarchy before they will come and acknowledge your presence formally. Right? Coal is a big deal. You plan to stock a lot. Hard to stock coal, right, Tyler? All right, everybody have a good day. Enjoy your Monday if you can. Well, you know how Mondays go. You know the deal. Don't work too hard. Don't work yourself to death. Have a good one. Live free.